What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to VidMark. I'm very excited this week to be joined by special guest Mike Hobizal, who is a web and app developer. He's just a phenomenal guy, very intelligent, very smart. This is going to be a really fun episode diving into apps and all the many things that go along with that. So, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to VidMark, a podcast to give you the video marketing knowledge to always hit the mark. Let us help build your confidence with video strategy and content creation best practices. Join us weekly for pro tips and guest interviews as we explore the powerful communication tool of video. It's time to boost your business. Let's talk video. All right, welcome back to VidMark, everyone. I'm joined by a very special guest, Mike. I don't even think I've ever said your last name. Do you want to make sure I don't butcher it? How do you say your last name?
Hobizal.
Hobizal. Thank you for joining me on the show. I don't really have an intro for you, so maybe do you want to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, maybe about your background and about your app too?
Yeah. So I am a web and app developer at Instrument Marketing here in Portland, Oregon. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and then I went to the University of Oregon where I met you. And I've been working at Instrument for the past 5 years or so, almost 6 years. And in that time, kind of learned about web development, app development, and actually created an application called Typeloop and recently sold that last year. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, a lot to unpack there. maybe we'll start at the beginning. We'll start at Oregon, which I think is really cool. We met through Duck TV, which was an awesome experience where you're very hands-on. And I think you were doing web development for Duck TV, but obviously learned a few video production tricks along the way because your setup looks awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
We were just talking about it before this, so yeah.
Yeah, I joined Duck TV. It was kind of random. It was like, I can do websites because I've been doing websites since middle school. So I've kind of a self-taught coder, and joined Duck TV, and it was funny. I was just kind of running the show for the website, like the only person, and it was pretty cool, and it was fun to be like an extra in some of those random comedy shorts.
Yeah, lots of different hats get to be worn. That's wild. You were the main guy on that. You cut out a little bit at the beginning of your response, but yeah, I remember that. Good times.
Yeah, some things are freezing, so if I'll let you know if they're freezing, I guess, and we could cut or something.
Sounds good. No worries. So you started teaching yourself web design. Something I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but one of the common themes that I read recently, I don't know if this is a true fact or not, but a lot of geniuses or everyone that's really good around computers has built their own at age 12 or 13. Was that similar for you? Did you build your own computer?
I never built a computer. I actually built a computer for the first time last year. So,
oh wow.
I was actually, my family just had a really, really crappy computer, and I just kind of that was back in the day of DSL and dial up. So everything had to be at, so much slower than it is today. Gaining information, web pages would load probably half the speed.
Exactly.
So, no, I never built computers. There wasn't a lot of hardware stuff that I did, but was definitely more of a software person.
Gotcha. And just teaching yourself code and things like that.
Yeah. A lot of it was actually, so me and my friend would actually make YouTube videos back in, this was 2004, 2005. So it was actually when YouTube first started, and we made YouTube videos, and I would, so I was the website guy, and so I put all our YouTube videos on our website. But also it was back in the day when you could comment on your video by yourself. I commented on our video 1,000 times and became the most commented video on the YouTube ranks back then. So
that's pretty awesome.
Wild West back then. Yeah.
Really? So that's cool. That's something you should definitely tell a lot of people about. Like most commented
Yeah.
video back in the like
Oh,
original
but
days when there's just like the original
oh,
like elephant video on
it was
YouTube.
just Smosh was probably the biggest thing back then, and but honestly, that's a missed opportunity. Like if I would have capitalized on YouTube, being on YouTube that far in the beginning, I should be, YouTube famous, but I'm not.
That's funny. Yeah, I kind of hopped on it too, and yeah, looking back, I mean, I think it's just tough. Like being a kid, you don't really understand like strategy and like how to think like term with like content. And I would have never predicted that Google was going to buy YouTube.
Yeah.
Which I think that was a big thing that helped catapult them to the next level.
Yeah.
But that's cool. So you've always been able to kind of like marry the two things together of like video production, web design, and then yeah, maybe you can fast forward to today, like how you're using those two different things.
Yeah. So, I mean, in my kind of day-to-day job, I work at instrument marketing, and so we do a lot of like marketing websites. But we work with some pretty big names. I don't get to touch too much kind of like video stuff really, but it's a lot of just kind of how companies, I mean, I get to see the whole process of creating kind of these marketing pages from design to client side, and seeing how clients want to present themselves, how they want to strategize in terms of like SEO. And then a lot of times it comes to me to kind of just build out these websites with like a team. But primarily I've been doing a lot of stuff that's more rapid prototyping. So that's more like, what is the kind of stuff we can develop, not now, but like maybe in the like near future, we can implement these kind of features on our website that are kind of more flashy and aren't going to work right now because it's kind of that newer technology.
Yeah, that's wild. That's a really cool job. Very challenging too. Like where do you even begin? Because the future can change like so rapidly based
Yeah.
on a new app that comes out. Like who knows? We could all be, I don't know, they figure out
Yeah.
some kind of new technology that we implement. I mean, you can kind of have a somewhat of a pulse on it, but yeah, where do you begin with all of that?
I mean, in terms of, I mean, it depends on kind of like whether it's application development or web development. So, but basically keeping up on new features that are being implemented into like browsers. So like transparent videos are kind of the new technology that's coming, and it's not like fully supported yet. It is if you have like the latest Mac OS and like the latest Safari or Chrome. But it's those kind of things where you have to keep up to date and kind of learn as you go. But it's a lot of experimentation too. So it's a lot of being able to have the time to kind of execute on those things.
That's wild. I feel like a big noob for having the VidMark podcast. I don't know what a transparent video is, but I also don't always have a pulse on the. But I'm sure the listeners are curious. Like, what's your definition of a transparent video?
Oh, so that would, I mean, just kind of like like a PNG, how you can kind of cut the frame out and have you can kind of background out of a person and kind of place it anywhere. That's kind of how, and maybe in video terms, it'd be like masking, like being able to mask out a video and put a different background behind it. So you're able to now kind of develop or export videos with the transparent background. So you could technically have a person, with no background on your website kind of a thing. Maybe that's hard to explain, but
no, I got you. And yeah, I think you see that sometimes like in the bottom right corner, like it looks like someone's talking to you.
Yeah.
And I think, I guess the concept behind it is ease of use. So you don't have to actually like click into the video, it just like maybe automatically starts playing.
Yeah. Another big thing is with like light mode and dark mode. So a lot of websites will have like a white background, but will be adaptive. So you can have a black background. And so you'd only need one video asset that works on both kind of backgrounds.
Wow. Yeah, that's good to know. And I think, do you also consider mobile throughout all this too? Because
definitely. I mean, a lot of the designers that I work with start from kind of mobile first. that's just kind of where the market usage is. And you kind of have to, you kind of want to build the best experience you can on mobile and not have just like a stripped down kind of crappy website for the mobile users.
Yeah. That's wild. Very cool. So yeah, you're probably always thinking of these like, high concept things, and that's awesome that they give you the free reign to just pursue doing whatever, like trying to imagine where things are going. I guess going through, like, maybe we can talk about your app, and you can just like walk me through Type Loop. And very big congratulations. I think when we first were like scheduling this, you're like, I'm not working on Type Loop anymore. I was like, what? And you said that you sold it. So maybe you can talk everyone through like how the initial idea, came to be, and maybe some of the challenges along the way.
Yeah. So basically started with my colleague Mike Gus, and so he had been a designer who was working at Instrument, and he actually, before he left Instrument, this was back in like March of 2019, he had reached out to some people and was like, hey, do you know people who know like app development? So it kind of got funneled to me, and I was like, oh yeah, I know some app development. So at this point, I'd only been doing it for maybe a year or two, like barely scratching the surface. So he basically got in contact with me, and we started like talking. And I personally, I don't like to do a lot of like freelance kind of work, or like, and that was kind of the idea. I was like, oh, I could pay you to do this. But we were talking, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And he's like, well, you want to go like 50-50 on it? I'm like, hell yeah. So that started that whole kind of relationship and building this app. And from the get-go, it was kind of like what I was mentioning before, kind of like making this prototype of like, is this actually even possible? And so in the first like few months, it was just me kind of playing around and testing, and him sending me designs. And it basically, I don't know, it feels like it happened pretty fast. We just started working together and riffing.
And this is like 2017?
No, 2019.
Oh,
So
okay.
March of 2019. Yeah.
Man, things moved really quickly then for you
guys.
Yeah.
And I want to say, let's see. So we started kind of prototyping the app, and it was kind of like figuring out, kind of building it up, because it started basically what Mike does. To give a little bit background of him, he's he's a designer, but also he does these cool kind of like typographic animations. So, which is something I remember from like kinetic type music videos back in the day. So he does a lot of cool experimental stuff like that. And people have been reaching out to him being like, hey, would you make something for my company, or would you make something for me? And Mike was like, well, hey, like a lot of people are asking for this. Like, it'd be cool to make a tool where we could do that. And so that's where it started. And so the premise is you have this, what started as just kind of like 12 different kind of animations where you type in your text and then it kind of animates it. And so we built on top of that to where there was kind of this motion layer. So where the text is moving, whether it's like moving around in a circle or kind of like doing a little wavy thing. We expanded onto that to have an effect layer, which is kind of more of the like warpy thing. So you can have your text moving like that, and then you can have it come in 3D and get all crazy. So that was a lot of the beginning, was kind of making these decisions of because at first it was like, well, you pick an animation and that's it. And then I was like, well, if you could pick these two different elements, you could get a little bit more unique per person for animation. So that was really cool to riff on.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, that's cool. And then once there's two, probably the combinations really open up the doors for all kinds of things. That was a smart way to start with. Yeah, the demand was already there. And so you guys weren't having to just create something and like cross your fingers and hope for the best. You were already getting feedback from people. And I definitely remember, like you were talking about those like music videos where those were the most popular things on YouTube, were music videos with text on them with really cool text and transitions. So good for you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. And it definitely grew into, I mean, nowadays it's like you got to kind of capture somebody's attention on Instagram, and you don't have a 3-minute music video. It's like 12-second little loop. So, yeah.
Wow. What were some of the challenges along the way? Did you have to like figure out how to make like compress these files so that way it wasn't like massive
Yeah.
things were sitting back and forth? Yeah.
That was basically the first kind of challenge, was like, how do I like, because I knew how to like animate on an app or a website, but it's like, how do you turn that animation into actual like MP4 file type? And how do you kind of manage resolutions and pixel size? And so that was definitely the first hurdle of like learning, was like, do I create like 1,000 images and stitch them together? And it turns out if you do that, the app will crash because it's just way too high quality of images, and it takes about like 20 minutes. So that was definitely the first part, is kind of just researching into how this could be done, which iOS actually has a lot of kind of frameworks if you're developing an app to kind of do some of these things, but not, I mean, they get you maybe about 50% of the way, and then you kind of have to figure out the rest.
Wow. That's cool. That's what I was curious, if you used any like kind of supplements, and for people out there wanting to start their own app, do you recommend it? Should you go to a developer? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the problem I was kind of addressing with the app is like a little bit something that's not it's not common. Like, not a lot of people have done what we did. So in that case, I had to kind of like find resources where they're not like heavily documented. Like, if you're making an app and you're like, oh, it's kind of like Twitter, you could probably find like 100 YouTube videos about like how to make a Twitter clone, and how to develop it. So that was part of the difficult thing, was like, how do you make something that no one's made? And that's kind of like, you kind of have to piece together, well, this person made an app that does this or something, and this person did an app that does this, and you kind of stick those two together. And with app development, I use GitHub, which is kind of like an open source code repository. And you're actually able to search through like different kind of search people's code that are made public. And that's kind of where I was able to draw kind of techniques of how people do things.
Wow.
But if you don't know any development, I mean, you probably want to either consult a developer or, I mean, you could learn. Everybody can learn how to develop an app.
Yeah, but I think you jumped into it. Like, you've already had like 10 years at least of experience, so it probably isn't as
yeah, it's a little
daunting of
different.
task. That's wild. So you're able to kind of piece together some different pieces of code, and does it all like speak together? Does it all work together? Do you have to also like jerry rig it that way?
Yeah, that's kind of where the prototype thing is like, you make something that works, and then after it works, it's like, all right, cool, it works, but probably not going to work if we send this out to 1,000 users or something. It's going to break somewhere along the line. So it's going from that prototype and refining it down and trying to figure out all the bugs. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge challenge. So you went into the unknown, built something that hadn't been built before. Yeah, and then I guess one of the other questions I wanted to ask you. Oh, what's that?
Oh, I was going to say it probably could have been built before, but not like publicly documented how people build them. Like, yeah, that's another thing, is like trade secrets. Like Instagram, they have all their like sticker functionality, but they're not just going to tell everybody how to do it.
Definitely. Did you guys wind up like sharing the love with people afterwards? Are you like pretty open to sharing with I think they call it like open source, right? To like just make it available for everyone.
As a company, no. And after selling the company, no, we can't really do that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, what was that like? The transition, did you guys like, did it come like pretty quickly? Like all my frame of reference is from like Silicon Valley. So were you just like on the have
Yeah.
you seen that TV series?
Yeah.
Or he's just like sitting there and he's like the valuation of the app just like goes up exponentially just based on like the demand or like creating a competition of demand out there.
Yeah. No, so well, when we kind of first released the app, it was completely free. We didn't have any sort of like premium features to it. So that was one thing that made it kind of like hard to be like, is this actually a valuable asset? Like we don't know because people aren't paying for it. They're actually just getting it for free. So so we actually got a message. I got a message on Twitter from a guy. It was like, "Hey, do you want to sell?" And I was like, what?" And so that was cool. But it was very, I mean, it was in my mind very like kind of lowbally. So I just kind of brushed it off. I was like, "No, not gonna do that." And then we actually developed kind of premium features, and we were actually charging for an additional features on the app. So once we kind of proved out that people would pay for it, it was like, okay, now we have more to back us up if we're going into like negotiations. So, and then the same guy on Twitter messaged me again like 3 months later, and that's kind of how it started. And
That's so
ultimately
interesting.
Completed. Yeah.
So those messages that people get, they're not completely bogus, I guess.
I guess not. No, yeah. I mean,
That's cool.
Yeah. If it's somebody telling you have like $1 million in a foreign country, that might be suspicious. But
yeah, send gift cards. That's what.
Yeah, exactly.
Gosh, that's well, congratulations to you guys. That's like a huge success story in a matter of like 2 years. That all kind of accumulated.
It was pretty quick, and it was. I mean, it was pretty fun though, because it was kind of like work that I like working in that kind of unknown world and kind of trying to figure things out.
Yeah, clearly you're good at it if you're your title is like rapid prototyper.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like I guess learning from coding back in the old days. It was just kind of do it as fast as possible. Somehow I picked that up.
Dude, that's really inspiring. I think for a lot of people listening, like, yeah, following your curiosity, like you didn't know it was going to lead to what it did. And it wound up kind of paying off. I mean, it's not just the 2 years, it's the decades of all the experience and things that you've been working on, but that's cool. That's kind of accumulated. Yeah. Do you want to try to climb this kind of mountain again?
Maybe. I mean, that's the thing is, is kind of like, I think I did have kind of that intuition, that sense that like, oh, this could actually be a cool app and it could actually probably do well. So I think at this moment, I'm not like trying to force myself into anything, but if something comes up and I'm like, hey, that could be big, I mean, maybe I'll pursue that.
Yeah, you're always open to it. Yeah, I would say, since you're shying away from freelance work, we won't plug on the podcast that everyone can reach out to you to create their next app. But no, that's exciting.
Hey, you can message me though, if who knows.
Okay.
I mean, I have my family members always coming up with something. I'm like, nah, that's already been done.
That's too funny. I know. Yeah, it's hard to be original and try to be outside the box. It's kind of like what you guys did. Take two different concepts and like morph them together. And that, well, it's not that simple, but I'm simplifying it. That if you're able to, combine two like things and make it work, then you can tread a new path. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's also kind of like seeing where kind of the market is trending towards, and kind of like, a lot of people are using Instagram to kind of promote their business or promote kind of their personal brand, and so we kind of saw that. Maybe not originally, maybe that wasn't our original like kind of target audience, but it was like, okay, people like to share stuff on Instagram, and they also want to share kind of like cooler stuff than other people are sharing, and so it's like kind of getting a leg up or using an app that'll help you get there too.
Wow. I think something else that was fascinating when we were talking about this, like many months ago, pre-COVID, was that you didn't really do a lot of like promotional around this. Like it just kind of picked up its own steam like within the app, right? Or am I getting that wrong?
No, you're pretty right. I'd say it probably started. I mean, Mike Gus is pretty. He had maybe about like 2,000 followers, maybe under 2,000 followers. I had 400. I don't know. I don't have that many followers. So it was kind of bundling it with his personal brand actually kind of helped promote it. So
That's
like a
cool.
lot of people knew his animations. And so it's kind of like, you know, an animation app with by this cool animator, you know, so that really helped. And a lot of kind of like my friends and coworkers kind of shared it. And then it was like, we didn't really pay for any advertising, especially when we weren't making money on it. We just kind of let it happen. And once it started like blowing up in Brazil, that was when it was like, whoa, there's a lot of people in Brazil using our app, which is really cool.
That's awesome. Some international traction. Did you guys then like, I guess, was it already readable in other languages like Portuguese?
No, so we never, we didn't do any kind of translation stuff. That's something that it was kind of like always the like, well, we should probably do this at some point. Because people were downloading it in like Russia and China and Brazil. And it's like, wow, this is just kind of like a quality of life improvement for all of them. But that was also going to be extra money to get a translation done for kind of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of the app was actually pretty intuitive enough that we didn't really need that. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the core functionality, I mean, even if you don't know English, you might not know how to do things, or you'll know as much as the other people, because we don't have like a walkthrough tutorial. It's kind of just you open the app and you kind of have to do it.
You just learn it. And I think that's becoming more commonplace where like, you know, Snapchat, they just expect you to kind of learn how to do it. Or whenever they do an update for, you know, Facebook or Instagram, you gotta just, that's interesting. A cactus knows how to survive. It can endure scorching heat, limited rainfall, and defends itself against critters daily. Your business is no different. To survive harsh conditions, it's important to develop deep roots using media content that'll continuously nourish and support your marketing efforts day after day. Tactus Media is here to help you determine a strategy and create media content. Together, let's map out the next sequence of videos, podcasts, and social media to help your business thrive. Work with Tactus Media, media tactics that stick. Ouch! Visit tactusmedia.com to learn more. What's your favorite part throughout all of this process? Like, is it just like trying to make things work? Is it like doing all this work and then it finally, I don't know, comes together? I know when I was taking some like coding classes, it's just mind blowing that I can just type in like this little bit of code and this functionality happens.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think one probably my favorite part was building kind of the effects code. Which is it was a whole new language to me. And so that's written in shader language, which is like, imagine if you were coding and instead of kind of like, you know, coding like, oh, right here is going to be a text box that says hello. It's more like at this pixel, you know, I have X and Y of this pixel, set it to this color or move it in some way. And you're doing that for every pixel. And so that's kind of the effects language, is you have to kind of manipulate. So you have one block of code that manipulates every pixel. And so you do that with like a lot of math and a lot of sine functions. So if you can imagine kind of like a sine graph, and the ups and downs, you kind of use that to like take a pixel and move it up and down. And that's kind of what gives like wavy effects. Like a sine function is like kind of the core of getting weird looking effects.
Wow.
I guess.
That's
so that was cool to learn that. Yeah. And second would probably be just in terms of coding, second would be just the performance optimization. And so that would be like, because I think at some points it would take like in the early, it would take like maybe 5 minutes to render a video, which is not great. And so cutting that down to, in some cases, like 16 seconds or like a minute was like very satisfying. And when you're doing that, you're just kind of looking at numbers on the screen. You're like, oh, it's too slow.
Yeah, man. And so you guys were just setting your own benchmarks just for kind of the heck of it. Like that's so wild. It's just like just the two of you trying to make it work.
Yeah. So, I mean, the benchmarks, you're trying to benchmark against kind of like, I mean, if you try to benchmark against Instagram, you know, they're doing all servers that will, you know, probably do things in a matter of seconds. While we're keeping everything kind of internal to the phone. So like, you don't need to be online to make a video from it. You know, you don't kind of like relay anything. So yeah, it was definitely problems to try to solve.
Gosh, that's pretty wild. And especially once you add like that third element, like the 3D element, and yeah, trying to, like, you're explaining like kind of coding for that X and Y axis. It's a lot. It's not easy what you guys did.
Hopefully this isn't too nerdy for your viewers.
No, I think people are curious, and they definitely, I would tell people, watch the visual of this on YouTube so that way you can kind of see some of the hand gestures that we're making. But yeah, I guess, yeah, thinking about the viewers, like if someone does have an idea for an app, like what's a really easy way to work with a developer? Is it good to like wireframe it out? What makes things easier for a developer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you can come at that, because if you're a designer, I think you probably might have a little bit more cohesive language. If you're more of kind of like a producer, production kind of person who just wants to get things done, I mean, that's a really good question. It's just trying to find the common language, you know, and with Mike, working with Mike, it was kind of a lot of, I think we were a really good partnership of a designer developer, but I think a lot of it was just kind of like trusting the other's intuition. And so, you know, I'm taking designs, I'm like, okay, like maybe I don't understand why this is laid out like this, but I'll develop it out and then I'll play with it and be like, oh, now I know why Mike designed it this way. Or the vice versa. It's like, sometimes I come back to Mike and I'm like, hey, like this button, can we change it to this? And he's like, yeah. And then, you know, it's kind of that trusting kind of thing and just kind of working together in a cohesive way.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like you guys kind of complement each other well, and you're able to, yeah, think about the end user. And that's interesting. You bring up, even you kind of question it, but then once you build it out, you're like, okay, now it starts to make a little bit more sense. Which is so nuts. That's something that I run into like in the video world too. You don't really know until you go out and like capture the footage and you start piecing it together how it's going to start to, you know, come together. And there's always, I'm sure it's like anything, there's like a million workarounds, a million different ways to come to the same like solution in the coding, in the development world.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. There's especially with iOS development where things are notoriously not documented and like as the best way to do something. So there's probably 100 different ways to do one thing.
Yeah. So you guys are working within both environments of iOS and on Android?
So we actually only develop for iOS. And this is, I mean, probably for my sake, it would have taken me because I don't know how to develop for Android, or I've never done it. So it would have been like a little bit more learning curve to do that, and then kind of duplicate all the code into a new language. It was kind of our choice to just kind of completely go all in on iOS, which definitely we had a lot of followers on Instagram who were like, Android, please, like give us the Android. And like, as much as we want to be like, yeah, we'll do it next week, it's like, that's something that's going to take, you know, months out of our time and also kind of take away from this experience on the iOS. So especially as two people, like if I had another developer, it might have been a different story.
Oh
But
my gosh. Yeah, that brings up a good like or something that I'm thinking about is like how did you find the time? So would you just like can you work on code for just like an hour or two at a time, or do you really need to kind of like deep dive? And sorry if I'm really like simplifying by just saying that you're working on code, but I'm sure that's like all the other aspects of the design and how. But like when you're working on it, did you work on it just like on an hour or two, like in the evenings? Do you spend like a whole day on a weekend? What's your workflow usually like?
yeah, so um, I find this to be true with myself, but if I'm working on something that I'm like really like intrigued to find an answer, I can just keep going. So a lot of it was actually, I mean, I'm working 9 to 5 on my regular job or longer at sometimes. So a lot of it was in the evenings or weekends, and it would just be like I'd have one task to do, and then I would kind of go down a rabbit hole, and it'd be like 6 hours later,
Oh my
whether I've
gosh.
solved it or not. But it's a good time.
That's pretty cool. It's just fun talking with somebody that's like very passionate about what they do. And it sounds like it was a good, really good project for like scratching the curiosity itch for a lack of a better
Yeah,
phrase, you know?
for sure.
Let's see. I think we've kind of really talked to, is there anything else you want to say about like type loop or anything I haven't asked you about it?
I'm not sure. There was a little bit about the just kind of like in terms of a kind of like our mouth or word of mouth kind of advertising that we were doing. When we did start kind of making premium features that we charge in the app, we kind of had a little bit of money to be like, okay, well, now we can do something with this. And we basically, we weren't paying ourselves at this point. So it's like, well, we'll just put it all back in the app. So there's like App Store advertising, but there's also Instagram advertising and Snapchat advertising. But kind of what we found to be most effective was actually reaching out to influencers. So people on social media who will just kind of either do a paid post or a lot of times we were just like, hey, like, do you want to try out our app? We'll give you like a free year subscription to all the premium stuff. They're like, sure. And so that turned out to be way more effective, I think, than running, the traditional kind of Google ads or App Store ads. And so when we get somebody who, when people would share it organically, like we didn't pay them and they had like 80K followers on Instagram, you could instantly see like the downloads just spike and like, that was pretty cool to see. But it was really interesting because you're like, what kind of people are gonna want to do this? But yeah.
Do you want to talk about what it was like working with these influencers, or like how did you vet which ones that you wanted to reach out to?
Yeah, we didn't. So we didn't. We reached out. So me and Mike use Notion. Have you ever heard of Notion?
Yeah, it's for.
It's
Is that for like? No, I haven't heard of Notion. All right,
So
I thought it was like a web development platform, but maybe
it's
not.
it's kind of like a file sharing kind of. It's kind of like Google Docs, but like on steroids. So like you can have like a Google document, but you can have spreadsheets, and they're all kind of organized in folders, and they're all shared. So we use that a lot. We actually started like a spreadsheet of just random Instagram profiles that we came across that were like, this person looks cool. And, they got quite a bit of followers and they kind of have this aesthetic that we like. And so we just added like names to that. And then we just kind of both were like reaching out, see if they wanted to try the app or like if they had their own kind of paid partnership kind of contract that they did.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how that started. And yeah,
That's awesome.
It was just like finding people that we liked their style and they were kind of doing stuff cool. And we were like, yeah, like it'd be cool to work for this person. Who knows if they want to work with us, but can reach out.
Yeah. Were they pretty approachable, or like did some of them you had to like circle up a couple different times before getting feedback, or before they would like respond, or did you like how
Yeah.
did that what that process look like?
So uh, basically, I made a generic template of what I could send to these people, of like, hey, like, you're cool. Do you want to check this out? Didn't do a lot of follow up on people. It was more like, um, if they said they wanted to try the app, it was like, cool, send them a code. And then we didn't really kind of pressure them to do anything, for people who didn't want to do a paid thing. Um, and I think we actually only had like 2 paid people. So those are people, and a lot of the times they reached out to us, and they'd be like, "Hey, you can pay me, and I'll post it to my 50K followers." Like, all right, cool. So, but yeah, the process is pretty casual. I would say most of, in general, the Type Loop kind of project, we kind of wanted to run this as just like, 2 people who are kind of creatively invested in this thing. We don't want to kind of like drown ourselves with work. And so we kind of kept it kind of casual in that way.
That's awesome. That's really nice. You're able to just like, yeah, make it like a passion project, but it actually, has some kind of reward at the end of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Were you ever worried about like too many people getting onto the app and like things crashing or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
Like, do you have to be fearful of things getting too big too fast? Like if you guys went viral, would you have been screwed?
I was thinking about that. Yeah, it was because I mean, luckily we didn't have that many bugs. That's one thing that Apple shows you, is like how many downloads you have and how many crashes you have. And I remember 1 month, I want to say we had like 10,000 downloads or something in a month, and like 8 crashes, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!" Like that feels good.
Yeah.
But there's times when we get like a lot of so people like to reach out in the like Instagram DMs for support, and so that was usually me responding to those. And I kind of did some math in my head one day. I was like, okay, so if we have X amount of active users, and if that's like, and we're getting 3 DMs like a day, I'm like, oh shit, if we got up to like some million, we're gonna get like 300 messages a day, and I'm not gonna be able to do that.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I was very like, that was a little stressful, being like, all right, we need to, like, maybe we'd have to implement a whole support system or hire somebody. But I mean, luckily it didn't
customer
happen.
Support. Yeah.
Yeah. I say luckily, but like that would have been pretty awesome anyways.
Yeah, it's like a good problem to have, but you just like, figure it out as it comes along.
Yeah, exactly. It was just one thing that stressed me out, probably for one day. Like I didn't think about that too much, but
yeah,
it is an interesting thing to, like, yeah, if you just astronomically blow up, like what do you do?
yeah. I know. I don't think anyone's really prepared for it, but I'm sure there's people that's like their whole thing is they'll reach out to be able to help you out if you, I don't know.
Yeah.
You think that there's someone waiting in the wings, but
and that was definitely something with kind of our growth, was like, you kind of realize if you're just trying to be 2 people, keep your day jobs, and you're making this thing, if you're really trying to grow it, you're probably going to have to quit your day job, go 24/7 on it, and you're probably going to have to invest a lot more money into it. And so that was kind of what led up to us ultimately selling it, was being like, well, we're 2 people. We're kind of in an industry that's pretty competitive with like Instagram, Visco, all these other companies, where Instagram is also known to just take whatever features people develop. So it's like, okay, we have this lead time. If we're trying to build it in this next year or 2 to something competitive, we're already up against giants in this industry. So it was kind of a decision to be like, well, kind of see where you're at, and just kind of take the money and go a little bit, just because once you realize that you'll ultimately probably be crushed by the competition unless you really invest all your time into it, you kind of have to just make that decision at some point.
Yeah, because Yeah, if you don't have the teams and the resources, yeah, you're competing with Goliath, which is kind of sad, I would say, for maybe some of the other like app developers out there, because that probably discourages some people from trying to do things.
Yeah,
But that's the reality of
it
capitalistic
is.
society.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also just being um, our main form of usage is to be used on these other platforms, and so we are a very like adjacent kind of app. Uh, I mean, we are a creator tool that can be used anywhere, but ultimately we saw the most usage being social media. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome though. A very very cool story. And just of how you've been able to do the impossible, and and it came to like a nice ending too. We talked a little bit about like advertising. Did you guys ever have like ads on the app itself?
so no, we never did apps or ads on the app. That was kind of a conscious decision, just to be like, that's not how we want to make revenue. That's definitely one way to go. But I think personally, we didn't have any sort of, we didn't log any information about people at all. So we actually didn't collect emails. We didn't have user accounts. And that's just that was kind of something I wanted to try, was like, how far can you get without, ultimately making money off people's data, or
Mhm.
making money off of like screen real estate. But yeah, so I don't really have too much experience in mobile ads, but it's definitely one way to make money.
That's awesome. Well, you guys maintained like the cool factor. I think it's cooler
Yeah.
when you don't have that stuff. And
Yeah,
ease of use, and yeah, it's easy to just like, I don't know, we need to make 5 cents off of every click or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, do you have any like what does the future hold? What do you got on the horizon for you?
I don't know. I Not much. No side projects right now.
You probably like it that way. I know you like with your day job, it can fluctuate of, yeah, like you said,
Yeah,
8 hours a day to 16 hours a day.
it can get pretty busy. I was working on a calculator app, which sounds very nerdy, but who knows?
I feel like that's been done. So like, what were you
Oh,
doing
it's
that
been done.
was like,
Wait, I actually have a favorite Mac app called Numi. That's like a calculator where you just it's almost like coding. It's almost like a code calculator.
Mhm.
And they were supposed to make an iOS app, and they haven't done it for the past like 4 years. I'm like, well, maybe I'll just make one similar to it, make it for my own usage. So we'll see.
That's really cool. That's absolutely inspiring. Not easy to do. One of the things I wanted to ask you, so you read all these like computer like languages, different codes. Like, can you speak like actual languages, like other different languages in real life?
Me?
Yeah, just random side question.
I no. So I've been doing Duolingo for Spanish recently.
That's cool.
That's probably the most I know. I took Japanese in high school. I don't really know much.
Gotcha.
But
So
yeah,
they are two different schools of thought, different ways of thinking.
I would say so, but I really don't know. I've heard stories of people who have dreams in different languages. Like that's kind of a sign when you're finally starting to understand the language. You start dreaming in Spanish, even though English is your native language. And I've had code dreams, so who knows which. Code
That's
dreams
really
are
cool.
it's the very worst. It's like sometimes it can be like a nightmare where you're like stuck in some situation, and you're like thinking of an algorithm that will get you out of it, and like I've had
Whoa.
many of those. So they're very abstract. I don't know, they don't make any sense. But
Are you able to like wake up and write down the code and like see if it actually works or something?
no, I haven't. I should try. But it's mostly like, what should I eat for food? And it's like, oh, 12 plus 2.
That's too funny. That's actually really trippy. I've never even heard that kind of story before, but like I think a lot of the listeners will think that's a trip.
Yeah.
I've had a couple times where I've like dreamt like a few words or two in Spanish, and I look it up and like it really means nothing. And I was like, dang it, I thought I was close.
You're there. You're almost there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, this has been really cool having you on the show, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time and talking about your app. I love the setup. You got the blue lights, and I think I think you got one of the former interviewees' book in there, Bucket's book behind you.
Yeah, I got the Bucket's book. Shout out to Grant Lemons.
Yeah, and Philip. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, very cool. Best of luck in the new year, and yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to get this out there, and we'll keep you posted on it. For everyone that's tuning in, we have all the links in the description. You can connect with Mike, ask him questions in the DMs, and check out Type Loop.
Yeah.
Even though you guys aren't working on it anymore, it's still really cool, and I hope it keeps doing better, because the better that app does, I think it reflects good on you guys, right?
Yeah, I hope it does well too.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy your weekend.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Later, man.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to VidMark, a place for all your video marketing needs. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform and tune in every Thursday morning on either iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and more. For a behind-the-scenes look and some bonus tips, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next time, good luck with your video marketing efforts, and remember, always hit the mark.